Welcome to the Powered by Herts podcast. My name is Brie McDermott King, and in this podcast, I get to speak to the University of Hertfordshire's most inspiring graduates to learn how they overcame their biggest challenges and how they achieved their professional success. I also get to help you get ahead by receiving specialist advice from some of Herts' experts. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about navigating the job market. We're going to explore topics like growing your confidence, making yourself stand out, and finding the job that is just right for you. And that could be landing your first graduate role, climbing the ladder, or making a career change. So today I'm joined by the perfect person to help us along with this conversation, Jo Eaton. Jo is the Career Development Manager at the University of Hertfordshire and has over 14 years experience in higher education career services. Hi, Jo, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Brie. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to talk about this because, well, excited might not be the word, because when I hear job market, I remember how I felt, especially as a final year, and just the panic. And it was just such a miserable topic to talk about.
Yeah, we
But
hear that a lot.
right. But from your standpoint, is it really a misery? Like where are we right now in the UK? How is the job market? Is it really that bad?
It's interesting you should say that from your own perspective, Brie, because I've been at the University of Hertfordshire for 8 years, and that never changes. Whether it was 2016 when I started or 2024 now, whatever's happened with the pandemic, anything that's sort of happened in the world, when you're in your final year, whether you're doing an undergraduate or a postgraduate course, it's frightening and scary. But there is some glimmers of light out there. There is some good news. The graduate job market is not shrinking at the rate that the press might report that it is, and it's quite easy for the press to sort of jump on any issues when it comes to the graduate job market to to encourage people to feel uneasy when it's not as bad as it could be. We work a lot with an organisation called the Institute of Student Employers, and they support employers and universities with lots of labour market data and information. And the ISC has said to us really recently, in the last week or so, that they do expect graduate employers to increase student and graduate hiring by at least 5% this year. So that's not huge, but it's certainly not,
Right.
everybody's not going to get a job, and the situation is really bad. The graduate market's always tough, with lots of students applying for those bigger graduate schemes. And yeah, there is going to be competition in that. You can't argue that there's a lot of people doing um, higher education courses. But our advice to students and graduates is try and avoid those negative headlines, and don't be put off by applying for jobs. Even in the depths of the pandemic, dare we mention it, over 80% of student and graduate hiring still continued as normal. So it's not always as bad as everybody thinks it is. And employers are always talking to us as a career service about the low numbers of applications they often get to individual vacancies. And it, people that have graduated like yourself are always surprised to hear that, because they think the competition's always going to be enormous. And yeah, for some places and some schemes and some employers it is, but particularly SMEs, smaller, medium-sized companies, they're often saying to us, we advertised with you and we only got a couple of applications. Why was that? And I think it's often students feel that they're not ready to apply and not don't have the skills, and I'm sure we'll get into that a bit more later. But um, there are lots of reasons why students and graduates don't apply, but you should do, because you mustn't assume that there's loads and loads of people applying.
Yeah.
There's differences based on where you live or where you want to work, of course. And we always say it's research. Everything we talk about today will probably come back to individuals doing research, um, which I appreciate sometimes, because it's more work for me to do. But the more prepared you are, whether it is you're exploring labour market or you're looking for own individual types of roles, the more research and the better prepared you are, better really. Um, a couple of other good things to think about for people listening, whether they graduated recently or are looking to graduate or graduated a few years ago, is that employers are starting to take away degree entry requirements, and can be much more pragmatic about who they recruit. And they want to diversify their workforces. They want to get different types of people with different levels of qualification, different experiences into their businesses. And fundamentally, there's still more roles available than graduates. So although there is a lot of graduates, there's still a lot of jobs out there.
Mhm.
It's the way that you apply for those roles makes the big difference, and not just sort of throwing out lots and lots of applications and not thinking about the research can be the big difference, really.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you for such a great answer. I feel like you touched on all the different questions that I've got for you. I feel like you gave a really nice summary, so I'm looking forward to like delving deeper into it. And actually the first question that I had based on what you said was because you mentioned looking at headlines and all these things. What are some things that graduates, I know I did, can do to often hold themselves back and kind of get themselves in a mindset that actually is counterproductive?
Yeah, no, and we're particularly at this time of year as it gets towards the time when final year students and undergrad and postgrad are thinking about what's going to happen after their degree. What the biggest thing that we see and the biggest sort of challenge we have as a career service and as a university is trying to get those individuals to have confidence in what they've got to talk about and how they talk about it. And that must probably seem quite basic, but the amount of students we meet in appointments or events that say, oh, I haven't got anything to put on my CV, or I didn't put that on my CV because I didn't think that would be relevant, or I did that work for a family member, or it doesn't relate to what I'm studying. And what we're really trying to do is get people to have confidence in what they have done. You mentioned about standing out, and it's really difficult because we really try and encourage students and graduates that they don't have to be, remarkably different. They don't have to be sort of fire juggling at weekends and jumping out of planes to make themselves sound different. It's how you talk about what you've already got that makes you stand
Right.
out. But I appreciate that phrase "stand out" could be quite scary for some people. So it's that self-awareness of what you've done, and for students that are graduating soon, that job that you've got in TK Maxx on a Saturday afternoon, or the bar work you do, or the internship that you did where you say, you've done a month's work doing this or 3 months. These are all really important things. And one of the biggest things that I really try to get students and graduates to not say about themselves is the words just and only. The amount of times a student will say to me, oh, well, I just work in TK Maxx on a Saturday afternoon. And then you say to them, but then you manage a team there and you look after the tills, and it's not just
Right.
and only. And the only person that's saying just or only is you. And by saying those words, it's easier to feel more negative when you write stuff down. And the only person that's saying those negatives are you. So it's really, really confidence that is the biggest thing. Then that has to turn into how you then talk about those things that you might start to recognize that you've got. Actually, yeah, I have got some skills. I just need to be able to talk about them in a much more professional way. So we work a lot with our students, both in the stuff we do in the curriculum and in our appointments, about trying to get that professional language, and bigging up what you do. Talking, just, not being afraid to feel confident in that experience that you may have had or that skill that you may have gained. It's really important that graduates do research about the barriers that might be affecting the sectors that they could be looking at, and things that might be affecting, certain types of labour markets. And, particularly when we were going through the pandemic, of course, there wasn't much event management roles and students had to think about diversifying, but doing that research and understanding what's happening in your market,
Yes.
and the broader opportunities that are there. And one thing I really wanted to get across today, Brie, is many, many employers don't care what you studied. They just care that you've done a degree. And I'm not in the business of talking anybody out of becoming the thing that they thought they were going to be when they studied. I say this a lot to the creative arts students. You're doing a photography degree, not trying to talk anyone out of becoming a photographer if that's what you really, really want to do. But did you know that by doing that photography degree, you could actually be on a graduate scheme with a big corporate employer, because you've got a degree? And, those people that say to me, oh, I'm doing this job now, but it's got nothing to do with my degree. So you probably couldn't do that job unless you had a degree. And often it doesn't matter what that degree is in. It's that higher level of study, it's the research skills, it's all the experiences you've had whilst you were studying. And there was a lot of employers that still only look to hire graduates. So expanding that knowledge, and we were talking about this only this week, getting our students to look at graduate schemes and graduate opportunities, but not getting too caught up in the job title and looking at what the job says the skills are and those transferable skills, so that you think, well, actually, I did a degree in geography, but I could be a person in a marketing graduate scheme or a consultancy graduate scheme. And yes, you can still have a passion for geography, but the fact that you've got a degree is what that employer is looking for. So I think confidence and awareness of what's out there are the two biggest things.
Yeah, no, that's such valuable advice and information. I feel like I really love what you mentioned about research. And it's funny because it feels like a given, but I know that for me, I don't know if it was maybe the drive of just wanting the job so much, you just go and rush and you're just filling in the fields and, trying to get it done. What else, like what other tips would you give to graduates who are applying for roles and like how much can we expand on that research? How deep can we go?
Yeah, and just before I get into that research, it was really interesting what you said about, the passion of applying. But I've seen a job, I'm going to apply for it.
Yep.
And students and graduates often say to us, I've applied for 50 jobs and no one's got back to me. So then we say, well, did you do that research? Did you target your application to that particular employer, to that job? And it might mean you apply for less, but you've probably got a better chance of getting noticed
Right.
because you've spent that time targeting your application by acknowledging your skills and experiences. So it's frustrating because students do want to apply for lots of things, but actually by breaking it down, applying for less, but spending a bit more time on it, with all the things that I'm going to tell you now about applications, then that might help just for those applications to get noticed and for you to not be the person sending out 50 CVs or 50 applications. So yeah, we've mentioned research already, but it's not just the advert and the job description and whatever else the employer is providing. It might have a person specification, it might have a list of skills. You've got to go beyond that. You've got to look at what is being mentioned on the internet about them in Google News. You just stick in the name of the company, see what else they've been doing recently. That might help you to see, oh, actually, they're working on a big project now, and I've got something that I'm working on at the moment
Right.
that I might be able to match up with that. Going that beyond the website, using other specialist websites as well to help you with that labour market research. There's some specialist ones that students and graduates can use that are based around different sectors. So there's Grad Cracker for STEM type jobs. There's lawcareers.net for law, the business of fashion for fashion. There is always something. And I think students and graduates are often surprised to go, oh, there's a website that talks about finding jobs in my sector and gives a lot of that labour market news. There's some other websites that we would recommend as well for labour market. I'm going to talk a little bit about our website and our resources later, but there's Target Jobs, there's Prospects, and these are all really good sites that are really targeted at higher education graduates and undergraduates to help with that search. I'm going to mention our website for the first time now. It's Handshake, and we have loads of labour market stuff within Handshake and our resources. But LinkedIn has to be one of the biggest places for students and graduates to do that research. And sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming. I don't know where to start, students say to us, with looking at LinkedIn.
Mhm.
We can provide lots of resources to help with that, and there's stuff on our resources. But LinkedIn is one of those sites that the more you use it, the more you become familiar with it, like any social media site that any of us could be using. I always recommend downloading the app to your phone, not just expecting to do it on your laptop or your work computer whilst you're working. You could be scrolling through LinkedIn and looking at stuff whilst you're on the bus or while you're waiting for a friend in a pub or whatever. And it's about looking at all the different sections on there and getting yourself involved in people that work in those industries and following them. You don't have to connect to them all the time. Some people can feel awkward doing that. You can just follow them for their updates. There's special interest groups. There's job adverts. There's loads of things within LinkedIn. And like I say, the more you use it, and we can help with that. We can absolutely help alumni to learn how to use LinkedIn. There's loads of great tips online. There's a really good tool within LinkedIn. And if you search the University of Hertfordshire's LinkedIn account, within that page, there's an alumni tool, and you just click on the alumni button, and then you can put in the year that you graduated or the subject that you want to find out more about. You might be looking for a job in the law sector, and you might want to see who's graduated from Hertfordshire in the last 12 years that studied law. And then they're really warm links for you because
Wow.
I hope you feel like this, Brie, but once you've graduated from Hertfordshire, you do feel a little bit sort of nostalgic towards it. You want to support people that have
Yeah.
studied there or are studying there and graduating there. And that's your really warm network. And there's over 100,000 alumni from the
Yeah.
University of Hertfordshire on that LinkedIn tool. Yes, I'm not saying you contact them all, but it's going to help you with that research to say, oh, that person works at that company. Oh, I didn't know that company existed. And then that's another company for you to follow and another place for you to look. So there's loads. It does all come back to research, but there's lots of tools to do that that are specialist in different sectors. There is obviously Google, and there's LinkedIn is my three biggest areas for research to help people apply for those jobs to do research. Then when it comes to actually talking about yourself, we've already mentioned that being professional in language, bigging yourself up, talking about those skills and experience that you've gained. And we can help with that. We can help with anybody that wants to talk about a specific job. You could come to us and say, I found this job. How can I make my application work for that? So it's the research will help provide confidence, I think.
Yeah.
Not just sending out lots of vacant, not just sending out lots of CVs, really targeting it. That's
Yeah.
the biggest tips.
That's really helpful because I have been to many like panel, I don't know, workshop where they talk about building confidence, and there's never like a real roadmap or like a step-by-step process. But actually, I think you're right that when you do the right research, that's actually how you empower yourself. So yeah, I think that's really encouraging to hear. So does the job market change depending on the time of year?
Though traditionally,
Mhm.
there's been graduate schemes and graduate jobs that are advertised between September and Christmas. And that there is still a little bit of that going on, but I'm pleased to say that that has changed a lot. And there's a lot of the bigger graduate employers that recruit month on month, year on year, all the time, and they're constantly hiring for roles. So that's really useful for people that have already graduated who are still looking. You're not just closed down from the graduate schemes because you didn't graduate this year.
Right.
There are still organisations that do that, and do have a look when you're doing that research to see if people are hiring throughout the year, and there are many of them. And the smaller companies, those smaller and medium-sized enterprises that I talked about earlier, they're dependent on the need of their business. So jobs pop up all the time, depending on when somebody's left or when they're ready to expand, or, they're looking to grow their team because of a special project. So there is sometimes where there's more jobs, but
Mhm.
that has really changed. And again, by looking at different types of employers, you're expanding your network. Don't assume that you have to go to the big graduate employers. There's lots of smaller companies that will be based in all the areas and countries that our graduates live that will be hiring at different times of the year. So yeah, it doesn't have to just be that traditional milk round, as they used to call it, which was the beginning of the academic year.
That's good to know. You mentioned earlier when you were speaking about yourself, you said we're here to help. And I know you're gonna delve into, the resources and the support available for students and graduates at Hertfordshire. But I wanted to shine a light on the fact that you do actually speak to businesses about their recruitment needs, and I think that's important for people to know, because it almost verifies the knowledge you have. You're speaking to the people, you're speaking to these employers. So what would you say, having spoken to those businesses, what are common skills that you would advise people to just have and invest time in?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it comes back down to people acknowledging that they've got those skills, and really
Right.
delving into them, doing that self-critique, that self-awareness piece to make sure that they do understand. Because it's really easy for everyone to say, I've got good teamwork skills or good communication skills, but have you, and can you identify where you've got those from? Apparently, employers are saying more and more that the communication skill, business communication, that a lot of applicants say they've got, is one of the biggest areas that that they're actually lacking. So, we're trying to do more and more of that whilst students are with us at the university to improve their business skills. But it's making sure you evidence those skills, the things that employers have told us and that the market is telling us that are really important. Funnily enough, starts off with that self-awareness. So being aware, looking at yourself and thinking, okay, I've got a skill in that, but I probably do need to improve that. And then thinking about either how you're going to do that, whether it's a short course or whether that's something that you can improve when you start that job. I just need to know employers are not expecting you to be 100% at every single skill that's on the job description before you start. So you can talk about that as a developmental point. Working in teams is something really that employers are looking for. Pretty much most jobs have some element of working with somebody, even if it's somebody at the other end of a Zoom or a Teams, where you're having to collaborate with them and understand the challenges that that person is facing. So collaboration is really, really important. Analysis and particularly technical skills in whatever tech is used in that environment.
Right.
There's a big assumption that a typical undergraduate or postgraduate knows all about technology and can use all the technology that's out there and is digital natives. But we meet lots and lots of people that have nervousness about using certain types of softwares or programs that might be needed for their job. So make sure that you're fully up to speed with knowing what's needed. Make sure you understand how Zoom and Team works, and really using those tech skills, and then being able to analyze things within tech, whether that's data or reports, and being able to look at a piece of information and explain what it means is really, really important. Some of the more modern words that employers are using around skills are curiosity. So being able to ask questions and being able to explore things. And that's something you can certainly evidence in an interview if you've done your research. Being able to communicate clearly with clarity. Clarity is a big skill that employers are asking for. And resilience, not being knocked back. Or if you do get knocked back, being able to bounce back and see why you got knocked back or seeing why you felt like that and how you can move forward and showing that resilience. Because again, employers are human beings. They understand that people go through stuff, and they particularly understand that the most recent groups of undergraduates have been through a tricky time in their studies. And to show that you've carried on with your degree, to show that you maybe have had a part-time job whilst you've been studying and you've got that first job after graduation or whatever stage you're at, but you've kept at it, shows that resilience.
Yeah, I love that the examples you gave they were broad, but they were, some of them were more so attributes and, personal, but then others were practical. I think that's really important to know that, yeah, it's such a broad spectrum.
Employers are looking at strengths a lot more now, and that's a term that not everybody is familiar with. But yes, skills like those, and we call them essential rather than soft skills. You might have heard them referred to as soft skills, like communication, organisation, attention to detail, being timely, all those kind of things. They still exist and are important because they are essential to most jobs. But a lot of employers are looking at strengths now to say, what are the things about you that you can bring to us, rather than just testing people at interview. People might start to find they get asked questions at interview that are much more about individuals' personalities. So what does a good day look like to you?
Wow.
What can you bring? What can you bring to us? What does this make you feel? Because as much as they're trying to match people to skills, they're trying to match people to organizations. And they don't want to bring somebody on board who's not going to be the right fit, but vice versa. They want you to feel comfortable that they're the right fit for you. And a lot of those essential skills or technical skills can be taught.
Yeah.
Like I
Right.
said, employers are not expecting you to be the whole package when you start. So that's why some of them do sound a bit more, it's sort of people-centered and a bit broader, because they're strengths rather than actual
Right.
physical skills.
It's so interesting because you've just reminded me actually that in my current role, when I interviewed for it, there are a few stages, but one of the stages was like a culture fit interview, and it was just a chat. And I was kind of waiting for the question or waiting for the test or, whatever it was. But it was actually just to see how I gelled and got on with different members from around the organization. And as much as helpful as it was for them, I'm sure it was helpful for me because it reassured me that, oh, actually, I feel like I could get along with these people on a human level, let alone for, a business case. So that's really
Yeah,
encouraging.
they want to see, well, they want people to stay, don't they? So they don't want you to, they want to invest in you, and they want people to stay so that they can invest in you and you can progress through the company and gain in experience and progression. So yeah, that cultural fit is really, really important now. So that's interesting that you experienced that.
I want to talk about international students because I know that they have even a very unique set of challenges. And it's funny because when I thought about this question, I did a year abroad, which was great, but obviously I knew I was coming home. And so I always had the context of, okay, well, whatever I'm learning in this other market, I get to apply to a market I've grown up in. And I know
Yeah.
like the back of my hand. I can only imagine if you're going into a completely new place, culture, etc. So, what advice would you give to them and what support is there for them?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head there, because it is complex for international students and somebody that's uprooted themselves to come and study in the UK, potentially studying a degree in English for the first time, learning all those skills. It's so amazing, and that's one of the strengths of the University of Hertfordshire is we have so many international students. And the graduate route was introduced for students graduating from British English universities. So the graduate route was developed in 2021 for students graduating from English universities to make it easier for students to stay in the UK when they finish their course. So depending on what they've done, it's a 2 or 3 year work visa, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a graduate level job, although a lot of people would want that to be. And from what we're aware from government stats, the take up of that visa route has been high. But then it's that switch to long-term skilled work visas that we're supporting a lot of our graduates with, trying to find those companies that will sponsor them. We offer lots of resources through our website. There's organisations like Student Circus who do showcase jobs that are being sponsored by employers. That whole research thing that we talked about earlier is even more relevant to the international students because they need to understand the companies that have sponsored before or that are going to sponsor again if they're going to be looking for a skilled worker route. But they have time to do that at the moment whilst they're on their 2 or 3 year visa. There could be some potential changes coming from government changes around salary levels for people that are wanting to stay in the UK. So again, it's really, really important that international students and graduates keep on top of those changes so that they can understand the impact on what they might be looking to do. So that they are making sure they've got skills in the right places, that they're understanding the types of employers that could recruit them. We do always say to international graduates that consider looking for roles in places that you are able to work because you may then be able to transfer to somewhere in the UK because that's a big organisation that has an office in your home country and then has an office in London or Manchester or wherever it is in the UK. So keeping those options open is really, really important. As I mentioned, we have links to several resources within our website that students and graduates can use to help with that search. And obviously, we are here to support with that. We plan international events for our students. We've got a day coming up in April this year, specifically for international students to help understand that market that's out there. We also offer information about targeting your applications for the UK labour market. Because if you've moved from a different country and you're used to, for example, putting a picture on your CV, in the UK, we don't do that, but a lot of countries, they do. Some countries, they have really sort of scarce detail on their CVs because a lot of those jobs are gained through networking or family connections. And in the UK labour market, it doesn't always work like that. So we want to provide that information for those students and graduates to help them make sure they've got the best chance of those employers understanding. And there are a lot of employers that do recruit international students and graduates. The ISE, who I mentioned earlier, are doing more and more work to try and work with those employers to make them see the benefits of these amazing international students and graduates that are coming through. But research, research, research. I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, we've spoken a lot through the lens of someone who has maybe just graduated, and also about, through the lens of someone who has studied a degree and then wants to go into the industry linked to that degree. What about those who want to make a career change? Because for me, I don't know if it's a life stage thing, but I'm seeing a lot of people do that nowadays who are just, you know, saying that, yes, I studied this, but actually I want to do something completely different. And you spoke about it in terms of having a degree, in one area, but actually getting a job in another. So yeah, can we talk about career changes? What would you advise people how to even broach that when they feel that that's for them?
Yeah, so I hate to be repeating myself, but of course, research is really important. Think about the drivers behind why you're looking to make that change. Um, is it because you're unhappy in your current job? Is there something you can do to change that? Is it because there's not progression and actually you could potentially make that change within the same industry or even the same organization? But if your heart set if your heart is set on making that change, then making sure you do that research about different types of job profiles that are out there. Again, some of those websites I mentioned, Prospect and Target, are really good for that, to find out what's involved in those different roles and their entry requirements as well. Because, like you say, you might be able to make that change without having to do any further study or do a short course or upskill, because those skills that could be interchangeable and it's how you talk about themselves. But you might have to do some further study or a short course to get into that, whatever that role might be. And there's some free courses out there that you can do. You might have to find that you do a little bit more detailed further study. It just depends. But once you know that path and you've done that research, then you can start to sort of target all the things that you need around that. So targeting your CV, potentially changing your LinkedIn profile so it has more of a slant towards that area that you're looking for, starting to go to networking events. There's so many different events that you can go to across all the different sectors, to try and meet people to talk to about the kind of thing that you might want to do. And doing that research and talking to real people as well as doing that online research makes all the difference. So it comes back to research, different types of research, some online, and that in-person stuff you can't. And now we're able to do that, going to all the different types of events that exist in that sector, will really help you with that research.
Yeah. And the final kind of scenario that I could think of was, that some people graduate, and we've spoken about employers, but some people will have a business idea of their own, actually. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of entrepreneurs that I studied with and have since met that went to the University of Hertfordshire. So what about those who have a business idea? What support is available to them?
Okay, so we have a enterprise support team. If you look on the UH website and search enterprise, there's loads of information on there about the appointments that they can have access to. Sorry, about the appointments that you can have access to talk to our specialist professionals about how to become freelance or how to grow your business idea. There's little pots of money available to help grow that business. There's the university's flagship enterprise competition called Flair that graduates can enter to get funding to help grow your business. We have an excellent network of small businesses that are based both at the university and that are based around the country from graduates that you can be put in touch with to really grow that network. So if people want to get in touch with the enterprise team, they can look on the website or they can contact enterprise@herts.ac.uk to find out more. But yeah, there's lots of support there.
Thank you so much. And on to my final question, which I think is probably the perfect way to summarize all of this. Could you kind of just wrap up where graduates and students can find all of this information, particularly from your team and just the career service in general?
So I've mentioned Handshake, I've touched on our resources. So I'm just going to talk about those in a little bit more detail. Graduates from the University of Hertfordshire have access to the career support and the enterprise support I mentioned for 4 years after completing their course, whether that's a postgraduate course or an undergraduate course. It's just 4 years from when you finish. That means you can have one-to-one appointments. That means you can come to our events. both in person and online, and we have our appointments. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can have an appointment by Zoom, or you can have a phone appointment. And the same for our events. We run both events online and in person. Our website is Handshake, which is hearts.joinhandshake.co.uk. Within that site, there's loads of work opportunities advertised, some of which are the ones that I mentioned that employers are saying that aren't getting applications for. You have a profile on there. You can put information on there where employers can search for you. There is also an app for Handshake, so you can just literally download that on your phone and you can log in using your personal email address. So everybody that graduates, we use their personal email address for Handshake. And we also have a resources website, which is hearts.ac.uk/careers. You can get to that from Handshake, or you can go to it separately. Again, you log in using your personal details, and there's loads of great resources on there. There's a CV checking software, there's some interview practice software, there is loads of resources to help you with that business growth that we talked about before. So really do access those things once you've graduated from Hertfordshire, because we want to be able to support you. If you've got any questions, you can email us at careers@hearts.ac.uk. And if you want to phone us, there is a telephone number with someone there during office hours, 01707 284 791. And we do get lots of people still phoning us, so that's good to know.
That's awesome. Oh no, Jo, thank you so much for your time. This has been very nostalgic for me, just thinking about where I was when I was studying and how I felt when I was coming, towards the end of my my course. And I had great module leaders who supported me, but hearing that there's so much more resources, that we have access to, I feel encouraged. So I trust that those who are going to be listening are also going to be encouraged and feel empowered. So thank you so much.